Alright, hi guys, today we're going to go over the unit circle, which we started talking about just in the simplified form last video. So if you go to YouTube and you search the unit circle, you'll see many different ways to look at this. There's a hand trick, there is special right triangles, which is where all these angles come from, but I'm going to talk to you today about how when I teach it in Math 3, how I kind of go over how can you memorize all these different angles. So we're going to start with where we left off last video, which is just looking at the degree measures first. So I know that I always start over here on the right side at 0 degrees, and if I make a full lap around, that's going to be 360 degrees. Also, I forgot to mention that we're going to be using a lot of different colors today, so if you have different highlighters, pens, pencils, that's going to become super helpful in a few minutes. So 0 and 360, that means if I go halfway around, then on the other side is going to be 180 degrees. Up top will then be 90, and on the bottom will be 270. And so I'm going to go ahead and take my highlighter, and I'm going to highlight the lines that I just talked about there. And it doesn't look very straight, but that's okay. I'm also going to go ahead and the lines in the middle of each quadrant, I'm going to color them yellow as well. So you should have something that kind of looks like a wheel or a star, however you want to think about it. So right here I have this yellow line, and it's halfway in the middle of 0 and 90. So what number is halfway in the middle of 0 and 90? That's going to be 45 degrees. So 0, 45, 90. I'm going to add another 45 degrees to that, and I'm going to get 135. Add another 45 and I get 180. Add another 45, I get 225. Add another 45, I get 270. Add another 45, I get 315. Add another 45, I'm back to 360. Okay? Alright, so now I'm going to take a different color highlighter, and I'm going to highlight the remaining pieces. And just like that. And I'm actually going to go ahead, my 4 quadrants, so the 0, 90, 180, and 270, I'm going to go ahead and give them both colors. So it's going to end up looking kind of like a green because it's both yellow and blue. And mine looks a little messy, but that's okay. Alright, so now you notice that this quadrant right here for the blue is split into 3 pieces. So I'm going to take 90 and divide it by 3, and I get 30 degrees. Okay, so 30, and then the next blue will be 60. The next blue, because remember this line is also blue, it's included in both of my kind of circles that are overlapping, is 90. Add another 30, I get 120. Add another 30, 150. Another 30, 180. You should end up at 180 for half your circle because I know that 180 degrees is half my circle. So add another 30, 210, another 30, 240, another 30, 270. And remember that 270 is also going to be in part of my blue circle and it's part of my yellow circle. Add another 30, 300, add another 30, 330, add another 30, 360. And that takes care of all of your degree measures. Alright, so now we're going to talk about radians. So you could do this the long way, like you talked about in our last video, and take each of these degree measures and convert them into radians. However, that's not the most time-efficient method, and we have better things to do with our time. Okay, so we're going to start with radians. So 0, okay, and I'm going to talk about fractions for a second. So I am going to go ahead and convert that 360 degrees so we know what a full circle is in radians. So 360 times pi over 180. So I get 360 divided by 180 is 2 pi. So a full circle is 2 pi. So that means half a circle would be 1 pi or just pi. And I'm actually going to use a different color here that you can see a little bit better. So again, I just converted 360 degrees to get 2 pi, And I could have done it for 180 also, but I just thought about if a full circle is 2 pi, half a circle is 1 pi. So I'm going to start by just doing my yellow pieces here, remembering that 90 is a part of my yellow circle and a part of my blue circle. So I'm going to cover up the bottom part of my screen and I'm just focusing on the top half. So how many yellow lines do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4 to get to 1. Okay, so it's splitting it up into 4 parts. So in order to get to 1 pi, I have to split it up into 4 parts. So this is really going to be 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4, or a whole pi. So 1/4. All we have to do is really that's 1/4 of a pi, or pi over 4. So I say simplify and add the pi. Okay, 2/4. We can simplify that to 1/2, or pi over 2. Simplify and add the pi. 3/4 doesn't simplify, so 3 pi over 4. And then 4/4 simplifies to 1, so 1 pi, or just pi. Alright, next we're going to do it with our blue pieces. So remember that 90 degrees also is represented in your blue circle. And then we'll continue with the bottom pieces as well. Alright, so the blue pieces, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead on the outside. This would be 1/6, 2/6, 3/6, 4/6, 5/6, and 6/6. And I'm going to go back to my pink. So 1/6 does not simplify, so that's going to be represented by pi over 6. 2/6 does simplify to pi over 3. Remember, these are all fractions that represent a fraction of the whole, which is pi. 3/6. Now you notice I already have this. I always use this as kind of a self-checking point. So 3/6 simplifies to 1/2, and that is what I have here. So I kind of check it off there. 4/6 is 2/3, so 2 pi over 3. Simplify and add your pi. 5/6, 5 pi over 6. And 6/6 is a whole. We can continue this same pattern down below. Okay, so let's first start with our yellow circle. So we were at 4/4. So what comes after 4/4? That would be 5/4. After 5/4 would be 6/4, 7/4, and 8/4. Alright, so 5/4, simplify and add your pi. 5 pi over 4. 6/4 would be 3 pi over 2. 7/4, 7 pi over 4. And 8/4 is 2 pi. And that checks out. That's what we have there when we converted it. Alright, next let's do our blue circle. Remembering again that 270 degrees is also represented on our blue circle. So we ended up at 180 degrees. We were at 6/6. Oh, that's hard to say. So 6/6. Next we're going to have 7/6, 8/6, 9/6, 10/6. That does not look like a 10. 10/6, 11/6, and 12/6. Alright, so at 7/6, simplify and add the pi. So 7 pi over 6. 8/6 simplifies to 4/3. 4 pi over 3. 10/6 is 5/3. 5 pi over 3. 11/6 does not simplify. 11 pi over 6. And 12/6 is 2 pi, which is what I have on my line. So now we filled in all the degrees and all the radians. So lastly, what we have to do is fill in all of the coordinates. Okay, so one thing I want to write first is that cosine is going to be my x value and sine is going to be my y value. So just like you have in an ordered pair in a coordinate plane, x is your left and right, that's going to be represented by cosine, and we'll talk more about that in our next video, and y is your sine value. So first we're going to fill out the 0, 90, 180, and 270. I always like to start there. So a unit circle, remember, is a circle with a radius of 1. Okay? So first starting out at the 0 and 360 spot. I've gone 1 to the right and I have gone 0 up and down. So 1 to the right and I haven't gone any up and down. So I represent that with 1, 0. At 90 degrees, I've gone 0 left and right, so that's my x value, and I've gone up 1. Okay? At 180 degrees, I've gone 1 to the left, so careful, left 1 would be negative 1, and I've gone 0 up and down, so my y value is 0. And then lastly, at 270, I haven't gone left and right at all, so my x value is 0, and I've gone down 1, so it should be a negative 1. And that's how I'm going to fill out my 4 angles on my quadrants. Alright, so now how do we fill in all these other angles? So here's how I say to remember it. There's only going to be 3 numbers that you will ever use. 1/2, square root of 2 over 2, and square root of 3 over 2. Okay, so we're going to list these. These are in order from the smallest to the biggest. And if you can remember that, then it's going to make your life a whole lot easier. Okay, so I'm going to first look at 30 degrees. Now, you should notice that this triangle is a lot longer. It's a pretty short triangle, but it's pretty long. Okay, so, and then if you look at 60 degrees, that's a pretty tall triangle. Okay, so my tall triangle, looking at 60 degrees, that has the tallest triangle. So that has to get the biggest y value. I'm going to say that one more time. The tallest triangle, which is my 60 degrees, if you look at your 3 right there, your tallest triangle has to get your biggest y value. Think it's up the highest. So we know our y value is our second coordinate here. So what corresponds to my biggest y value? That's going to be square root of 3 over 2. All right, well then I look at what's my shortest triangle. That's 30 degrees. So that has to get the smallest y value. So that's going to be 1/2. Okay, and then 45 degrees is the guy in the middle. So that gets the one in the middle, square root of 2 over 2. Now, if you think about the x value, that's the distance from the center. So 30 degrees is the furthest out from the center. So it's just going to reverse. It's actually the longest, okay? So if you look at it, it's the furthest out. So this guy is tall and he's skinny. And this guy, you can think about, he's like short and fat, okay? So this, the x value is super big, square root of 3 over 2. And this one is the shortest horizontally and the biggest vertically, okay? Now you notice 45 degrees is kind of special. It has the same x value and the same y value, and that's pretty cool. Okay, so you should notice that these reverse. So once you've filled in your y values going down, they're just going to, whoa, we're not going to do that. Once you've filled in your y values going down, they're going to reverse going this way. Okay, so now don't try and repeat all that math going in all your other 4 quadrants, because you should know in your first quadrant, everything is positive. Okay, and we're going to fill in those things, the positive and negative right here in a second. So everything is positive in my first quadrant. Now in my second quadrant, we know x is negative and y is positive. So if you notice, 120 degrees is directly across from 60 degrees. 135 directly across from 45. 150 directly across from 30. So if I'm looking at 120 degrees, I can just reflect it from 60. So that's going to be negative 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. All I've done is taken the x value and made it negative. Same thing with 135. Negative square root of 2, positive square root of 2. The x value is negative, the y value is positive. Negative square root of 3 over 2, positive 1/2. The x value is negative, the y value is positive. And I'm looking just straight across on my circle. All right, moving down into the third quadrant. everything is going to be negative down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drop this 150 degrees straight down. And I know that it matches up with 210. So that's going to be the order. Now I can repeat and again look at my tallest triangle and do all that math again. And it's not really math, but look at what is the tallest triangle versus and figure out where does that square root of 3 over 2 go. And that would be perfectly okay. I'm more of a person of I just want to look at the reflections, whatever works for you. So I notice that 150 degrees and 210 degrees are in the same spot. So I'm just going to copy this negative square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2, but I know that in my third quadrant everything has to be negative. So negative square root of 3 over 2, negative 1/2. All right, for my yellow, everything's going to be negative. Negative square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2. All right, and then finally for the last one, negative 1/2, negative square root of 3 over 2. All right, we can do the same thing for the last one. So if I drop it down from 30 degrees, now here my x value is going to be positive, my y value is going to be negative. So I have square root of 3 over 2 and negative 1/2. Square root of 2 over 2 and negative square root of 2 over 2. My x value is positive because I'm going to the right, but my y value is negative because I'm going down. And then 1/2 negative square root of 3 over 2. All right, so finally let's fill in these positive, negative. Now one thing we need to note, we haven't talked yet about tangent. Tangent is sine over cosine. Okay, so we'll do algebra with this in the next section to figure out how actually do we figure out what that is. But for now, we're just going to talk about when is it positive and when is it negative. Okay, so we know cosine is x and sine is y. So in the first quadrant, we said both x and y are positive. So that means cosine is positive and sine is positive. Now, tangent, if I divide a positive number by a positive number, that's going to give me a positive number. So that means tangent is going to be positive as well. All right, let's move over into quadrant 2. Now I said x is negative. What corresponds with x? Well, that's cosine. So cosine here is going to be negative. What corresponds with y? That is sine. So sine is going to be positive. Now, what happens? It's sine over cosine. So if I take a positive divided by a negative, and that kind of looks like a lot of dashes, but a positive divided by a negative, well, that's going to give me a negative number. So that's tangent. All right, 2 more. So a positive, so that's going to be 2 negatives. So sine and cosine are both going to be negative. And then if I divide 2 negative numbers, that gives me a positive, which is tangent. All right, and lastly, cosine will be positive because that's my x. Sine will be negative because that's my y. And then tangent will also be negative. And that's your unit circle.